Hey guys, welcome back. Wanted to give you a quick look at where I'm at with this build, and following this segment I will show you how I darkened Fieldmarshal's aluminum parts. So first off, this is the stock, and the video that will follow this, where I show you the darkening, will be based off of this piece right here. And I basically use the same process for all of these major parts. There's some of the smaller parts. I submerged the part in the aluminum black solution, but just wanted to give you guys a quick look at where I'm at this. So you can see very nice dark patina to it. This has not been weathered at all. This particular piece will get painted with some crinkle paint, so I'm not so concerned about the finish. We'll get to that later, but this is the stock of the E11. You can see here, this is the end cap, and I think it turned out really nice here. Has very nice variation in color, so that's nice. These two parts are part of the bolt and spring assembly. This one is a work in process. I might go back and redo this piece because as I was removing the black, I really didn't like how it was turning out. When I put the spring on, it etched these odd looking lines into this piece. So I'll probably go back and redo this. This is the bolt, and you can see that it actually did darken up quite nicely. I am in the process of weathering this, so that's why you see this in a little bit of a splotchy state. But yeah, this took the aluminum black quite well. This was probably the best. This is the magwell. You can see that very even. All of these little parts here, I submerged into aluminum black, but the larger piece here, I used a foam brush. But you could see real quick, very nice patina to it. Also did the inside of it as well. So there you go. And then onto the smaller parts. So as part of the grip, I ended up darkening the trigger, the bolt, the ends of the bolt here. You can see on this side that as well. And then this, of course, got some satin paint. Here you will see the front sight. Darkened that, turned out pretty nice. And then this is the rear retaining ring, which ended up darkening up quite well. This piece certainly won't be painted. I didn't want it to have that aluminum look to it. That's why I ended up darkening that. And then this is the rear sight. Darkened this up pretty nicely, but this will get some crinkle paint as well. So anyway, guys, that is a quick look at what parts I have darkened using Birchwood Casey Aluminum Black. I still have the receiver to do, and I'm not quite sure how to do that yet, but I'll save that for a later time. So all right, let's move on. Next piece here will be what process I used to darken these parts. All right. Today we're going to continue with the blackening process for the aluminum parts for the Fieldmarshal kit. So unlike the smaller parts where I was able to submerge into the aluminum black solution, this time I'm going to use a foam craft brush and use this as an applicator to these parts. So let's follow along and see where we get with this. So first thing here, so this is part of the stock assembly. This is the part that when it folds, it's part of the handle, but then if you unfold the stock, this is the butt of the stock. So anyway, what we'll do is we will heat this up using the heat gun. We'll work in parts, so I'll work on the top section first, the sides, and then I'll address the inside afterwards. So in this case, do your best to heat this as evenly as possible. You don't want this so hot that you cannot handle this, but you do want it warm enough that the pores of the metal will open to accept the aluminum black. And yeah, we'll probably have to do this a couple of times, but we'll see how this part takes to this process. So while I'm doing this, just make sure you guys all have your gloves. And oh, that reminds me, let me get my glasses. Okay. Let's heat that up a little bit more. Looks like it's taking it on very nicely. So the nice thing about the brush versus submerging the part in the solution is you're able to agitate the surface, rub it in. This process does produce what I would call some slag in the metal, and that shows up as some black residue. This allows you to kind of rub it in. And so yeah, so this is the process. We'll rub this in for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then we'll let it sit. And then so we'll let that sit for a little bit, and we'll come back when I'll probably end up doing another application, and then we'll rinse it and go from there. All right, I think we've waited enough time for this, so we'll neutralize the solution in some cold water. Then we'll dry it off. So the way I do this is I just tamp it dry. I'm not rubbing it at this point. Just rocking. Then I'll take the paper towel. You can see that. Gently wipe it. And this is one way to see how well the metal has taken the aluminum black solution. So by the way, this is what it looks like. It's Birchwood Casey Aluminum Black metal finish, and I'll be following this up with the Birchwood Casey Barricade. So I'll show you how that works. But in this particular case, it looks like the metal has taken the solution quite well. There's not a lot left over on the paper towel. So we'll go through another application here. Same thing, we'll heat it up. let that sit. That's how it looks after the second application. We'll rinse it now. Same thing. Okay, looking pretty good. Then I will move on to the next side here. Sometimes what I like to do is, as I'm working on these other sides, I'll brush on a layer and go over the previous section. What I've noticed is sometimes if you have one or a couple drip marks, it could leave that outlined, etched, I guess, a trail in the finish. So while I'm working on this particular side, I'll every once in a while brush the other sides as well. So this looks like it is darkening up pretty nicely. So again, we'll go through the same process as before, and we'll continue this as we go along. All right, so I got all of the exterior sections completed. You can see that it has this little bit of a crusty white texture to it, or look to it. That's fine. We'll address that later. And then I'm going to finish out the inside here. And you might be asking why, because this piece sits in here, but what I like to do is to not see any of the aluminum show through. So the only way to do that is to just coat the inside of this entirely. So just like before, we'll heat this up, go through the first application of aluminum black, probably work it in over the span of 30 seconds to a minute, let it sit, reapply, sit for another minute or so, and then rinse it off. Oof. Okay, that one got a little toasty. And just keep in mind, when you're doing this, especially on the inside here, you're really not looking to make this look entirely perfect, because in real life, none of the items were perfect. What I do want is to try to give it a nice, even texture to it, avoid some of the splotchiness, and just to give it a look that doesn't look like it's aluminum, but it's some sort of steel. There. For the inside, for first application, that looks pretty good, but I'll follow the same process and we'll see how this turns out. All right, we've got all of the surfaces blackened at this point, so we'll get our barricade prepared here. So what I like to do is a little piece of paper towel, and I like to just saturate it a little bit. Barricade, and then put a couple of drops. So a little of this stuff goes a long way. From here, I'll just gently rub it in. And what I'm doing at this stage right now is just to coat the parts with the barricade. And you can see how the color of the material really starts to come through. It's nice, kind of deep color. And there you have it. All of the surfaces are coated now. What I'll probably end up doing is let it sit like this for now while I work on some of the other bits and pieces. I'll follow the same process for these parts, and probably before I turn in for the night, I'll go back over with just like this over all of the parts, and then I'll leave it overnight to dry. Tomorrow I'll come back, take a look. If I need to, I'll go through one more round of treatment, but if it looks pretty good, then I'll probably leave it alone. But yeah, that's more or less the process I use. So you could tell this was the finish more or less before. You can kind of tell now how nicely darkened it looks. So ultimately, these parts here, I'll end up painting with a crinkle finish. I do want to layer the paints, so some parts of this might not be entirely covered with the crinkle paint. And what I don't want is I don't want the aluminum to show through. I think that'd be too much of a contrast, and it's a dead giveaway that it's a replica, even though this won't be mistaken for the real thing. But I would like to have all the parts darkened to resemble what it could look like, for the real thing. So anyway, that's that. We'll let that dry. So thank you for following along this far, and we'll see how this turns out. Take care.